Okay. Well, I see we got Mike in here. Welcome, Mike. We're going to hang out. It's 5 till. We're going to start it right about 8. Open it up a little bit so people got time to wander in. Hope everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life as always. I'm just going through and gathering up some notes here while we hang out and wait. Okay. Meetings never seem to start out very big. I don't know why. You would think people would be wanting information about correcting a master trust account. Well, maybe they don't think they have to do it right away. Maybe they think they got all the time in the world. I hope not, because things are moving fast nowadays. And please feel free to share the link. We could always use as many people as needed, as many people as we can get. Guess we have to switch. Okay. All right. Well, like I said, I hope everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. We're on part 9 of reconciling the master trust account. And what we've done so far is just some basic explanation of how we're going to start moving into this process. And when we talk about reconciling the master trust account through the Postal One sites, that is an account that you have to set up yourself. So when we talk about the master trust account, we're not talking about the public trust. We're not talking about the Social Security number and the master record or the master record with the IRS. We're talking about establishing a master trust account yourself on the private side. And if you go back and watch those first 8 videos, there's actually one Facebook Live and then 7 Zooms. 7 or 8 Zooms, I think, are now on Facebook or on YouTube. And that will explain the beginning process. And tonight I want to talk a little bit about the end goal, because The purpose of trying to establish this trust isn't so that we can continue to operate in their commercial system. It's to show that we are separate from the commercial system and we have the same capacity of life without the use of their instrumentalities. And so our end goal is by putting them to work. Oops, let me pull my screen up. And this is in regards to what I've spoken on in the first few parts, in regards to the birth certificate or certificate of live birth and exchanging it for another certificate. It's 36 CFR 223 subpart 1, stewardship and result contracting projects. And it tells us about the applicability. This part sets forth the regulations applicable to the implementation of Section 604 of the Healthy Forest Restoration Act of 2003. And when we talk about this particular section and the implementation under their federal acquisitions regulations, implementation is a contract. And so that's what they're talking about, is contracting projects. However, as we read further, and here is procurement, which is the same thing as acquisition. And what they're doing is procurement of service contracts. If the Forest Service makes a determination as provided under 223 301B1 of this subpart that a stewardship contract is a contract for the procurement of services, the Forest Service will utilize the contracting procedure set forth in the federal acquisitions regulations. And I speak about this many times. It's Title 48 of the U.S. Code, 52.212-5, wherein it speaks specifically about that implementation. And it says contract terms and conditions required to implement statutes or executive orders hyphen commercial items. So anytime there's an attachment of commercial item following a executive order or a statute, then there's got to be a contract attached. Has to be. Well, this is the part that we're rebutting. We're not contracting. Determination of type of agreement, award of contracts and agreements. That tells us right there there's something different. Contracts are different than agreements. What we're going to do is use of contract or agreement. Notice down here it says award of contract and agreements. Up here it tells us the distinction contract or agreement. So now we see there's a different option besides contracting. Can we agree without contracting? Yes. When the Forest Service initiates a project under this subpart, the Forest Service is not going to initiate. The Forest Service has already got statutes, rules, and regulations under implementation for those that are contracted. A determination will be made whether to use a contract or an agreement to implement the project. So again, we're going to rebut that it's contract and that the Forest Service initiates a project. They're not the one initiating it. We're not doing it by contract. We're doing it by agreement. We are the initiator. We make the determination whether it is to use a contract or an agreement. Plain and simple. This is the part we need to be very aware of when we reword things. When we exchange that certificate of live birth for a land stewardship record certificate, we're doing it as an agreement and not a contract. We're removing the contract. Anyway, that link and this link is in the chat section right now. And this one here is, like I said, this is our end result contracting projects. We're doing it as a steward. No cost to you, no cost to us. There are no contracts. It is an agreement. At all stages, there is forgiveness for all errors and expenses. All errors and debts are immediately forgiven. In personam, equity acts in personam, in the now time, in the now venue, not some fiction on paper. It says, definition in this section, the chief The term chief means the chief of the Forest Service. So there's your definition of chief. If you click on chief, it's going to give you this exact thing right here. The term chief. Chief means the chief of the Forest Service. Director, same thing. The term director means the director of the Bureau of Land Management. So we deal with the Forest Service, of which is directed by the Bureau of Land Management via agreement or contract as appropriate. If we are not funded, and we are the ones that actually fund things based upon a credit, then it is merely a transfer and it is no longer a funding. And that is the appropriate term. We'll see that later on in research where they're going to talk about funding in advance. And we're not in this for commercial purposes. Those are all commercial terms. To appropriately define it, if you're going to use commercial terms, we're the total creditor. We give all credence to him, which he made all things. So all things you get from the land and the soil and the water and the air were actually created from him. Land management goals. The land management goals of a project under subsection B may include any of the following. Again, it's got to be an agreement under B. We have to project. We have to give our vision of what we are looking for. We're not looking for commercial purposes. And we're going to find out that on the forest lands, it's all about forestry and timber rights. Timber rights. You're not going to be operating a mill. You're not going to be cutting down so many trees. The land's only going to have so many trees on it, or the land that does have trees on it, it's not going to be for timber use. It's all going to be for private. Keep your nose out. That's how we manage the land. Agreements or contracts, procurement procedure, a source for performance of an agreement or contract under subsection B shall be selected on a best value basis. Great, because a word fitly spoken is like golden apples in silver frames. And so I say, coin the words or purse the lips, because if you know the true value, it's based on doing his good works, knowing that we are all responsible to one another and to God. Contract for sale of property, knowing that every piece of property that we define as, quote, property, no matter where you get this definition, he made all things. It came from him. So even property is his. A contract entered. See, this is the problem. If we enter a contract, then we have exited our actual station in life. We have entered into personage ourselves by entering the contract at the discretion of the Secretary of Agriculture. And that means there's an agricultural lien. Agricultural lien means an interest in farm products, which secures payment or performance of an obligation for. So if we make that obligation the good works, his good works, as we are responsible to one another and to God, then the performance of is a loan unto a nation, for we are to owe no man anything, and we are to be secure in that when we walk in his way. Goods and services furnished in connection with a debtor's farming operation. So when you take out any kind of agricultural lien, you're providing goods and services in replace of that lien, calling yourself a debtor for a farming operation through that entering into a contract, whether it be rent on real property leased by a debtor in connection with its farming operations. which is created by statute in favor of that person, not yourself. The person named on the paper, that's whose favor it's in. So when you give up his favor, when you give up his grace for personage, you give up all favor, all of it, and it all goes to the person on the paper now. In the ordinary course of its business, furnish goods or services to a debtor in connection with the debtor's farming operation, or leased real property to a debtor in connection with the debtor's farming operation. So they're talking about the good works, claiming that they're not good works. You're operating in sin as a debtor, and therefore they're going to take part of your property, whose effectiveness does not depend on the person's possession of the personal property. They're making a claim they don't even have possession of it. 9/10 of the law is possession, so they're making 1/10 of a claim, and you believe them. You believe them. This alone proves that no agricultural lien is actually equity. It proves the favor of one through a statute. Then it goes on in these same terms of definitions, which I posted here, Trilateral Trust and Security Exchange Commission, Section 9, subsection 102, definitions and index of definitions. It says certificate of title means a certificate of title with respect to which a statute provides for the security interest. So again, it's telling you if you give up his security and subject yourself to the security of a statute, that's where you're going to get your equity. And it doesn't have any. None. It'll never give you the land back. You can't redeem the land through their paperwork. In question, to be indicated on the certificate as a condition of result of the security interests obtaining property over the rights of a lien creditor. Over the rights. An interest over the rights with respect to the actual collateral, the actual assets. So it's telling you the certificate of title is a transfer of rights, placing them in the interest of somebody else. Pure and simple. So as we go back to 16 USC, what was it, 6591C, stewardship, the end result is that we want to make sure that we procure through redemption of the land, not contract for sale of property, through our own methods of appraisal, of doing good works. The value of timber, like I said, it's their appraisal is based on the wood, the timber that you're going to produce and sell. We're not there to do that. We're there to replenish the land, not cut it down. The value of timber or other forest products used as an offset under subparagraph A. In general, the chief and director may apply the value of timber or other forest products removed as an offset against the cost of services received under the agreement. So we see here, this is where they're transferring the rights of the timber to the chief and the director as an interest. Can't do that. Can't do that. You don't have an interest in the land. You can't sell the rights. You can't sell the property rights. You can't sell nothing according to the land, because the land shall not be sold forever, for it is mine, and ye are strangers and sojourners with me. I preserve thee going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore. For I am the one that ordained thee a prophet unto the nations, sanctified thee before thou camest from the womb, because I knew thee before I formed thee in the belly. What is done is what ought be done. There is nothing new under the sun. As it is written, so shall it be. Shall be determined using appropriate methods of appraisal. Commensurate with the quantity of products to be removed. To be or not to be is the question. Be determined using a unit of measure appropriate to the contracts and may include valuing products on per acre basis. Nope, we're not going to value anything but the good works. That's the measure of value. The good works of a man. And a man's talents are worth $75 in gold, or 75 pounds in gold. So if a man goes forth every day with 5 talents, he's worth how much? That's 600 pounds of gold. Relation to other laws, notwithstanding subsection D and G of section 472A of this title, the chief may enter into an agreement or contract under subsection B, notwithstanding the Materials Act of 1947, 30 U.S.C. 602. The director may enter into agreement or a contract under subsection B. So, section 472A of this title, again, timber sales on National Forest System lands. When we get that land stewardship certificate, we're removing it from the National Forestry System. It's now going to be private. We're not in it for timber sales or National Forest System lands. Nope, it's removal. So when we talk about the Materials Act of 1947, that 30 U.S.C. 602A, bidding, advertising, and other notice, conditions for negotiation of contract. We are not negotiating a contract. We are not bidding. We are not advertising. We are giving notice of the conditions for the negotiation. Period. The contract is for the disposal of property for which it is impracticable to obtain competition. You're going to dispose of that paper property you have. You're going to expunge that record. It's no longer going to be confused with my private property. Period. Contracting officer, notwithstanding any other provision of law. That's telling you right there. The contracting officer has no standing. No standing. Read it correctly. And it's provision of law. That tells you that it has to be provided. The secretary, if it has to be provided, then where's the one? What about the one on your heart? See, that's the predicament they're in. They talk about prescribed and all this. How do you prescribe something that's already written? What is done is what ought to be done. There is nothing new under the sun. As it is written, so shall it be. This total babble. Secretary of the Interior may determine the appropriate contracting officer to enter into and administer an agreement or contract. So it's not just anybody that can jump into a contract and say, well, you got to listen to me because he says so. It don't work that way. The secretary may determine the appropriate contracting officer to enter into and administer an agreement or contract. That means through the secretary, the contract has to be determined first, whether it's an agreement or a contract, and then the appropriate contracting officer can be entered into it. They talk about fire liabilities. If you're not, listen, that's all insurance. It's all documented records that don't pertain to the origin of anything. Receipts in general, the chief and director may collect monies from an agreement. Let it not be confused. Monies from an agreement does not mean the agreement itself, whereas the agreement itself is money. And the agreements within that whole agreement determines different species of monies. They're the different obligations according to the paperwork. If you give it one source of money, then none of the collect monies occurs. Oh, no man, anything. If the collection is a secondary objective of negotiating the contract that will best achieve the purpose of this section. May collect monies from an agreement or contract under subsection B if the collection is secondary objective. It can't be primary if it is secondary. I'm telling you right there, they already recognize there's a primary element other than money. It's the assessment of the value first. Use. Monies from an agreement or contract under subsection B may be retained by the chief and the director. The only monies they should be retaining are your private documents of issuance of them to keep their nose out of your business. Period. Shall be available for expenditure without further appropriation at the project site. Yeah. Shall be available for expenditure without further appropriation at the project site. At your port, at your trading post, at your entrepot. You're the one that issues the money or agreement of the contract from which the monies are collected or at another project site. If you're the only project site, if there's only one source, then there's only one site. That's what we're establishing, one site. In relation to other laws, as we said, notwithstanding any other provision of law, the value of services received by the chief or the director under stewardship contract project conducted under this section, and any payments made or resources provided by the contractor, chief, or director shall not be considered monies received from the national forest system or the public lands. Then if they're not getting their value from the public lands, which is the only place that value can come from, then where are they getting it? The Knutson-Vandenberg Act shall not apply to any agreement or contract under subsection B. Reforestation, establishment of forest tree nurseries, tree planting, seed sowing, and work forest improvement work. Does that sound like replenishing? Does that sound like why it doesn't apply? Does that sound like our reasonable use of terms and conditions stated in uniform with their own code under the conservation laws of the Forest Service, reforestation management, general provisions that we need to be planting trees and not cutting them down? Establishment of forest tree nurseries by the planting of such trees through seed sowing and forest improvement, which is the entire intent of the grant given in Genesis 1 and 2. To go forth and multiply, to be abundant and replenish, to redeem the earth as we use it. As we use it. All of this stuff is very important in regards to the end effect of what we're wanting to do. Cost of removal. Like I said earlier, it's a removal. You're going to remove all them inaccurate records. Notwithstanding the fact that a contractor did not harvest the timber, the chief may collect deposits from a contractor covering the costs of removal of timber or other forest products. Notwithstanding the fact that a contractor did not harvest the timber, the chief may collect deposits from a contractor covering the costs of removal of timber or other forest products under Section 490 of this title and 498 of this title. Does that sound right? Notwithstanding, so they don't have any standing, the fact that a contractor did not harvest the timber tells you why they don't have standing, because nobody harvested timber. And they're saying that the chief, without standing, may collect deposits from a contractor covering the costs of removal of timber or other forest products. Is that paper a forest product? Or is all the commercial paper forest products? Deposits from timber purchasers to defray costs of disposing debris. So again, we're not harvesting. Somebody else is obviously purchasing debris. $498 cooperative work agreements. Are we doing good work? Disposal of monies received. Refund of excess. Payment from appropriation. Conflict of interest. See, and that's what I mentioned earlier. There's a big conflict of interest here, because if you claim to have an interest in the timber rights and nobody's properly conveyed those rights to your interests, then I beg to question, why do you suppose that you claim any kind of rights at all? I find that kind of stupid. I think anybody of reason and logic would find the stupidity in that. Performance and payment guarantees. In general, the chief and the director may require performance and payment bonds. See what they slipped in there? The chief and the director may require performance and payment bonds. So now we're no longer talking about just payment. Now we have another noun attached to the verb. Payment bonds. Under Section 28103-2 and 28103-3 of the Federal Acquisitions Regulations. So when you get that certificate of live birth and you trade it, one bond for another, a certificate of title for another certificate of title, and convey that the terms therein to its proper use, you destroy everything they've got, every document they've got, every last one, in an amount that the contracting offer considers sufficient to protect the investment in receipts by the federal government generated by the contractor. Again, if we're not contracting, there's no receipts to be generated, no costs, no need for them to protect it. They have no duty. You relieve them of all of their duty from estimated value, because now you have a responsibility to one another and to God. So if you by chance see this land on fire, you have a duty under God and to myself, despite any commercial laws, to send somebody out and help. Because you never know. If you don't get it right away, it might spread to your own fucking yard. This is the reason and logic. Excuse my language. That's the value, folks. Excess offset value. Any excess offset value is going to be coming from me. I owe no man anything. And any excess I will give unto the nations. Biblical. They tell you about it right here. Learn how to read it. Learn how to present it in that scripture. If the offset value of the forest products exceeds the value of the resource improvement treatments, the chief and the director may, the landowner may give it forth freely. End of discussion. Anyway, cancellation ceilings, advance notice to Congress of cancellation ceiling excess of $25 million. This is the purpose of giving our international notice. Advance notice to Congress. Which Congress? the Congress of the Swiss Confederation, the UPU, Uniform Custom Code, the Congress of the UN, the Hague Convention, all of it. The International Forum. We're going to let the world know there is no longer, it's a cancellation of the ceiling in excess of 25 million. Period. I don't care what the value is. It's no longer being valued at 25 million. It's being valued at the good works of God. Period. Transmittal of notice to OMB, Office of Management and Budget. So now we see we got to include the Office of Management and Budget, along with the Bureau of Land Management and Forest Service. Monitoring and evaluation. I guess you can monitor from afar, and if you see a fire, you better come. It's as simple as it gets. Other than the chief and director, participants in the process described in paragraph 1 may include. You're the only one that's, when you make this agreement, you're the one that determines. No one's included unless I ask first. One source. Reporting. It's not, there's no longer any need to report because you're not involved. Period. And with that, I'm going to open the floor. I hope that helps everybody comprehend the end goal here is to correct the record, and the record is the land record. They have a false record claiming titles to lands and then giving out certificates of titles and warranty deeds and this and that, and they're all false, every last one of them. And all we have to do is rebut it for the value that it is. Doing good works. Anybody got anything? Any complaints, concerns, comments, compliments? All appreciated. The board is open. We have about 4.5 minutes left.
Okay, Keith, can you hear me?
Yes, brother, please.
Okay. I just got a notice from the county here about my house. It was appraised last year at 90,000, and this year they're going to appraise it for 140. And if I don't protest it, it's going to jump up. And so this, I think, is my opportunity to re-establish this, because right now they're saying the land is a residence, and I want to change it to private property so it's taken off the tax roll. So
grab that warranty deed. Go down to the county courthouse, get that warranty deed. You're going to find out that that warranty deed isn't attached to an affidavit. It means it's not secured. That's why it's sitting on the county record. Somebody abandoned it. They don't have it in their private possession. So you're going to claim that warranty deed by putting a $1 stamp on the top left-hand corner. You're going to sign it, put your thumbprint on the bottom right-hand corner. You're going to take that not document number. You're going to take it and publish it in the newspaper as a notice and acknowledgement of warranty deed filed at the courthouse under this number, making claim to that warranty deed as yours, securitizing it. You're going to make a simple notice in the newspaper 1 day a week for 3 weeks. When nobody comes forth and makes a claim on that same warranty deed, then you can file an actual claim, noticing an entry upon the judgment of a abandoned warranty deed. File that same thing 1 day a week in the local newspaper for 3 weeks. Once that's done, then you can make your claim on the international record, and nobody, you make it, that's your land patent. You don't have to draw up somebody else's land patent. You don't have to bring it forward. You make your own.
I know that's beautiful what you just said.
You know, that's what acknowledgement is, to make something. Matter of fact, we got about 2.5 minutes real quick. Let me pull it up.
I mean, this is what everybody needs to do to cancel their contracts, because I'm not selling timber on this resident house. You know, they're leapfrogging, right, thinking I'm for hire, you know, I'm in commerce when I'm not. This house is just a place for people to stay at.
Yep.
And the land is here for somebody to enjoy. If there's an apple tree here, somebody can freely have an apple.
Yeah. And when we look at this Title 40 of the U.S. Code, this is protection of the environment. So it fits right in with the forest, right?
Yes.
and conservation. And it says right here, purpose and functions. Operations. The term operation shall mean any step in the electroplating process. Oh my. You mean the purpose and function of the protection of the environment in their operations is the electroplating of the environment? I'll have to find, where is it? I've got one in here if I can find it real quick. Definition of acknowledge. Huh. I'll have to find it, but there's a definition in here somewhere. And this is where they talk about transfer of property right, where they pull in their interest. But anyway, I'll find it sooner or later and post that definition of acknowledgement and tell